Hello, my name is Julien Nillon. I'm a financial analyst and the founder of LPE Research, an independent equity research firm exclusively dedicated to asset managers and specialized on French small caps. Last week, we have been working on the company Assystem, and today I'm going to present our first analysis on these stocks. Before I begin, I would like to remind you that this video is not an investment advice, but only an opinion. We do not do any business with Assystem and do not hold any long or short position on its shares. Having said that, let's get started. Assystem is an engineering company specializing in the management of complex infrastructure projects, mainly in the nuclear sectors, but also in the wider energy sector, transport and defense. More than 70% of the company's sales are in France and the rest worldwide. It is important to know that the company historically also provided engineering and technology consulting services to the aerospace, the automotive industry, but partially sold this activity in 2017. Assystem still owns 30.2% of this business through the company Expleo, but this stake is expected to be sold within 3 years. It should also be noted that the company holds a 5% stake in Framatome, a nuclear fuel and equipment supplier. The first things to understand when looking at Assystem is its market dynamics, and in particular the importance of nuclear power in France. France is the second largest producer of nuclear power in the world after the United States. France produces 16% of the world nuclear power, and 70% of the electricity consumed in France is generated by nuclear power plants. EDF, the national electricity utilities and Assystem main customer, operate 56 nuclear reactors in France. What is interesting is that many of these reactors built in the 70s and 80s are nearing the end of their life. In order to extend their service life, EDF has implemented a gigantic €5 billion investment plan, Le Grand Carénage. This plan, which will continue until 2025, ensure an excellent level of activity for Assystem today. Moreover, the group is benefiting from the construction of 4 EPR, evolutionary power reactors, in France and Europe. But beyond the very positive dynamic linked to the extension of the life of nuclear power plants, which is currently benefiting to Assystem, we believe the group should benefit from the energy transition and the absolute necessity to decarbonize the economy. Nuclear power has long been decried by environmentalists as dangerous and polluting. If nuclear power still has a bad image, the absolute necessity to reduce CO2 emission while responding to the expected strong increase in demand for electricity linked to, in particular, to the development of electrical vehicles puts nuclear power back at the center of the debate. In fact, nuclear power not only does not generate any CO2, but also provides cheap electricity without intermittency. Thanks to its nuclear power, France is the developed country in the world that emits at the least amount of CO2 per capita. To quote the French president, France has a chance when it comes to greenhouse gas emission, it's nuclear power. The reason I am quoting the president as the French is that the French government is expecting to announce tomorrow a major investment plan in the nuclear industry. A major plan that should be very profitable to Assystem. In fact, France has entered a pre-campaign period for the 2022 presidential election, and the energy transition and therefore the nuclear power is likely to be an important issue. All the candidates are positioning themselves on the issue. Some want a gradual exit from nuclear power, but the favorites are in favor of a massive reinvestment in this sector by France. The consensus among pro-nuclear politicians is to launch the construction of 6 new EPR in France very quickly. However, this amount could be revised upward given that electricity needs would require 30 EPRs. The government, for its part, should also announce important investment for the development of new generation SMR, small modular reactors, theoretically less costly and safer. In addition to the resurgence of interest in nuclear power, Assystem should indirectly benefit from the rise in energy and electricity price, as well EDF recovery in profit and margins. Thus, as currently observed, the economic recovery and the energy transition are leading to strong tension in the energy markets, particularly for gas. Gas spot prices have tripled in less than a year, and this increase is forcing the French regulator to raise electricity price. After increasing by 3% in 2021, price expected to rise by almost 10% in 2022. EDF, whose costs are mostly fixed and which only slightly depend on the gas price thanks to its nuclear power, is benefited from this increase and from the rise in demand. The group will record a strong increase in earnings in 2021 and should see its margin continue to improve over the next few years. This should enable it to significantly increase investment, which should be very favorable to Assystem. At the end, we expect EDF capital expenditure on nuclear power to increase by 20% over the next 3 years. Assystem has reported very strong half-year result, in particular doubling its operating profit. This rebound was expected from the situation and the crisis of 2020, but this performance also marks the group's strong growth momentum. In the nuclear sector in particular, the group's revenue for H1 were 7% higher than before the crisis. The second half of the year is expected to maintain the same growth momentum as 2022 and 2023. We conservatively expect the nuclear business to continue to grow organically at 5% to 7%. Yet, it should be noted that the group revenue are not expecting to grow as much due to another activity, also because of the disposal of non-strategic divisions. In terms of margins, despite an expected increase in labor cost, Assystem should be able to improve them. For 2023, we expect an operating margin of 6.4%, comparable to that of the mid-2010s. In the end, we forecast a 40% increase in EPS for 2023 compared to 2021. Beyond Assystem, it is also necessary to analyze Expleo, which shareholding represents a large part of the group value. Indeed, Expleo, which generates almost 2/3 of its turnover from aeronautics and automotive industry in 2019, has been hit hard by the COVID crisis. Its turnover in 2020 fell by almost 16% to 900 million euros. The company has to record heavy losses which weigh on Assystem accounts. Since then, Expleo sales and profitability have recovered somehow, but still well below pre-crisis levels. The recovery is expected to continue over the next few years, but will remain gradual. The question is therefore whether Assystem, which intends to sell its stake within 3 years, can expect a good price. The 38.2% of Expleo is currently valued at 165 million euro in the accounts. Assystem hopes to make 280 million euro from it. Only in the view of the group expecting profit, this seems difficult, but in the context of a takeover by a large ECN, it seems possible. 200 million euro will correspond to 1.2 times turnover, which is in line with recent transactions. Now, as for Assystem, it trades on an EV on sales of 0.5 times and an EV on EBITDA 2021 of 5.7 times. At first glance, that may seem quite low, but these multiples are in fact quite close to the historical multiple of the group. This also reflects the relatively bad reputation of the group, which operates in a controversial industry, whose accounts are difficult to read and which suffer from a poor performance of Expleo. However, in the view of a central role that companies should play in the energy transition in France and its growth prospects, we believe the group could experience a rapid re-rating and move toward an EV to EBITDA of 10 times. This will bring the stock to 45 euro per share before the sale of Expleo. That is for today. Hope you have enjoyed this video. If you would like to know more about our opinion, you can contact us and order our first analysis pack that include our presentation, our forecast, our valuation model, our stock reputation measurement, and allow you to discuss with me. In the meantime, do not hesitate to subscribe to our YouTube channel or to visit our website at lperesearch.com. Thank you very much and see you soon!